They called me their rock, except I was the foundation, the loud one, the bold one. I was the man who stepped out of the boat onto crashing waves because I believed in him more than I believed in the laws of physics. At the table, surrounded by my brothers, with the scent of wine and bread still lingering in the air, I stood up. I looked the Son of God in the eye, and I made a vow that I believed with every fiber of my being. I told him, Lord, I am ready to go with you both, to prison and to death. I meant it. I truly did. My heart was swelling with a courage that felt unbreakable. I thought I knew what loyalty was. I thought I knew who I was. But I didn't know that courage is easy when the sun is shining or when you are surrounded by friends. I didn't know that the human heart is deceitful above all things. He looked back at me, not with pride, but with a sadness that haunts me to this day. He told me that before the rooster crowed, I would deny knowing him 3 times. I scoffed at the idea. Impossible. I would die first. I was Peter. I was the brave one. But hours later, when the darkness fell and the torches of the Roman soldiers burned holes in the night, the man who swore he would die for Jesus couldn't even stand to be identified as his friend. The collapse of my courage didn't happen all at once. It began in the Garden of Gethsemane. The air was thick with the scent of olive trees and damper. We were supposed to be watching, praying, keeping guard, but my eyelids were heavy, weighed down by a sorrow I couldn't quite understand. When the soldiers arrived, the chaos was sudden and violent. Torches flared, metal clashed, and voices shouted in the dark. My first instinct was violence. That was the old Simon speaking. I drew my sword. I swung wildly, aiming to kill, desperate to prove my earlier boast. I cut off the ear of the high priest's servant. I was ready to fight an army, but then he stopped me. He healed the man I wounded and surrendered himself. That was the moment my world fractured. I was prepared for a battle, for a revolution, for a glorious last stand. I was not prepared for surrender. I was not prepared to watch my king be bound like a common thief and dragged away without a fight. Fear is a cold thing. It starts in the stomach and spreads to the limbs until you feel frozen. When they took him, everyone scattered. We ran like frightened children, but I couldn't just leave. I had to know what would happen, so I followed. But I followed at a distance. That phrase alone condemns me. I wasn't beside him. I wasn't walking in his footsteps. I was lurking in the shadows, trying to keep him in sight without sharing in his danger. I crept toward the high priest's courtyard, blending into the darkness, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The night air was biting, a chill that seeped through my tunic and settled in my bones. I told myself I was being strategic. I told myself I was just gathering information, but deep down, I knew the truth. I was terrified. I made my way into the courtyard. It was an enclosed space, bustling with servants, soldiers, and temple guards warming themselves around a charcoal fire. The orange glow of the embers cast long, dancing shadows against the stone walls. I needed warmth, so I took a risk. I sat down among them. I sat among the very people who had arrested my Lord. I held my hands out to the fire, trying to stop them from shaking. I kept my head down, hoping the flickering light wouldn't reveal my face. I just wanted to be invisible. I wanted to be just another face in the crowd, just another anonymous man on a cold night. But you cannot hide. When you have walked in the light for 3 years, a servant girl, just a young woman, moved through the group. She paused near me. The firelight caught my face for just a second, and she squinted. Her eyes widened with recognition. She didn't shout. She just stated a fact. She looked at me and said, "You also were with Jesus of Galilee." The accusation hit me harder than a physical blow. The panic was instantaneous. It wasn't a calculated decision. It was a reflex of self-preservation. Every eye around the fire seemed to turn toward me. I felt the weight of the soldier's presence, the looming threat of the dungeon, the cross. The words tumbled out of my mouth before I could stop them. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. I feigned ignorance. I pretended her words were nonsense. I stood up abruptly, needing to escape the scrutiny, and moved away from the fire, toward the gateway. I thought if I just moved to the shadows of the porch, I would be safe. But the darkness offered no sanctuary that night. As I stood near the entrance, trying to calm my breathing, trying to rationalize my lightening myself, it was just to avoid unnecessary trouble, that I couldn't help him. If I was arrested, another girl saw me. She spoke to the people standing nearby, her voice carrying that same terrifying certainty. This fellow was also with Jesus of Nazareth. This time, the fear was sharper. It was closing in. I didn't just feign ignorance this time. I escalated. I swore an oath. I used the sacred name of God to back up a lie. "I do not know the man," I declared. I called him the man. I couldn't even bring myself to say his name. I stripped him of his title, his divinity, and his friendship in a single sentence. I reduced the savior of the world, my best friend, to just the man. And inside, something vital was breaking. An hour passed, an hour of agony. I stayed in the shadows, trapped in a personal hell of anxiety. Every conversation seemed to be about him. Every laugh from the soldiers felt like a mockery of my cowardice. I should have left. I should have run back to the others, or better yet, I should have marched into that trial and stood by his side. But I was waiting for the dawn, hoping the nightmare would end. But the test wasn't over. A group of men approached me. One of them was a relative of Malchus, the very man whose ear I had cut off in the garden. He looked at me closely, listening to my voice. "Surely you are one of them," he said, his voice hard and accusing. "Your speech betrays you." My Galilean accent was unmistakable in Jerusalem. It was a brand, marking me as an outsider, a follower. Panic took total control. Logic vanished. Love vanished. There was only the primal, animalistic need to survive. I began to curse. I began to swear bitter oaths, calling down judgment upon myself if I was lying. I shouted at them, my voice cracking with desperation and rage. "I do not know the man," I screamed. I wanted them to believe me so badly that I became like them. I adopted their anger, their harshness. I completely disassociated myself from the rabbi who taught us to love our enemies. In that moment, I was not an apostle. I was not a rock. I was a crumbling ruin. And then it happened. Immediately, while the curses were still echoing in the air, while the lie was still hot on my lips, a rooster crowed. It was a piercing sound, sharp and clear, cutting through the murmur of the crowd and the crackle of the fire. It wasn't just a bird greeting the morning. It was a gavel striking a judge's bench. Time seemed to freeze. The sound brought everything back: the upper room, the bread, the wine, the boast, the warning. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. At that exact moment, the guards were moving Jesus across the courtyard. Maybe they were transferring him from Annas to Caiaphas? I don't know. All I know is that he turned amidst the beatings, the spitting, the mockery, and the chains. He turned his head, and he looked straight at me. It wasn't a glare of anger. If he had looked at me with rage, I could have handled it. I deserved rage. I deserved to be struck down. But it wasn't anger. It was a look of profound, crushing sorrow. It was a look of absolute knowledge. He heard me. He saw me. He knew me. He saw the cowardice I had tried so hard to hide. He saw the betrayal I had sworn I would never commit. In his eyes, I saw the reflection of the man I actually was, not the hero I pretended to be. That look shattered me. It broke the dam of my pride completely. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't breathe. I turned and ran. I fled from the fire, from the soldiers, from the accusers. I ran blindly through the streets of Jerusalem, tripping over stones, my vision blurred by hot, stinging tears. I found a solitary place, away from everyone, and I collapsed. I wept. Not just a quiet cry, but a bitter, heaving, wailing that came from the depths of my soul. The shame was a physical weight, crushing my chest. I had failed. I hadn't just made a mistake. I had betrayed the source of life itself. Judas betrayed him for money. I betrayed him for fear. What was the difference? I felt like I was falling into an abyss with no bottom. I lay there in the dirt as the sun began to rise over the city, casting a pale light on my shame. I thought it was over. I thought I was disqualified forever. I thought the story of Peter ended there in the dust, a traitor and a coward. I didn't know then that the story wasn't over. I didn't know that 3 days later, the grave would be empty. I didn't know that there would be a breakfast on the beach, a charcoal fire not of judgment, but of restoration. I didn't know he would ask me 3 times, "Do you love me?" To heal the 3 times I said, "I don't know him." But in that dark morning, all I had was my failure. And it is a terrible thing to realize you are not the hero of your own story. But perhaps that is exactly where God needs us to be broken enough to realize that we don't need to die for Him to save ourselves. He died for us because we couldn't. It is easy to judge Peter until we see ourselves in the mirror. How many times have we stayed silent when we should have spoken? How many times have we followed at a distance because the fire of closeness was too hot? The beauty of this story isn't Peter's perfection, but his restoration. If you have ever felt like you failed God too many times to be forgiven, remember the charcoal fire on the beach. He is waiting to restore you, not condemn you. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Hit the like button to help this message reach more people. And tell me in the comments, what is a moment in your life where you felt you failed, but God turned it around?